Atlanta, the leading city of the South, owes its very existence to railroads. Without tracks, Atlanta would not have happened, or it would be very different from the vibrant city we know today. Railroad lines radiate in every direction, placing Atlanta as a central crossroads, receiving and dispatching a tremendous volume of railroad traffic on a daily basis. This city, born of the railroad, is very much the Chicago of the South when it comes to its railroads.
All aboard!
Hi, I'm Howard Goodwin, and welcome to All Aboard. From very humble beginnings at Milepost Zero, the Western Atlantic Railroad, the area which is now downtown Atlanta, was once known only as Terminus. As the area grew and prospered, the name of Marthasville was adopted and was used until just before the Civil War, when a more deserving name, Atlanta, was chosen, probably as the feminine of Atlantic for the Western Atlantic Railroad. Through historic photographs, we will explore the importance of the railroads and Atlanta during the Civil War, including the thrilling Andrews Raid, also known as the Great Locomotive Chase. Our visit will take us to present-day Atlanta, served by Norfolk Southern and CSX. Our train awaits. All aboard!
Politics and railroads have often gone together, in Georgia or anyplace else. In 1836, Georgia's leaders wanted the state to have rail access to the rest of the country. An act incorporating the Western and Atlantic Railroad to extend from Chattanooga to a point on the south bank of the Chattahoochee River was passed by the legislature. From this point, private companies would be encouraged to build their lines to Athens, to Madison, Milledgeville, Forsyth, and Columbus. These other early railroads included the Central Railroad and Canal Company of Georgia, the Georgia Railroad Company, which was soon changed to the Georgia Railroad and Banking Company, and the Monroe Railroad Company, later to become the Macon and Western. Franklin M. Garrett, Atlanta's leading historian as well as a noted rail historian, recounts the founding in 1837 of a location called Terminus.
Some 8 miles from the Chattahoochee River. It was a junction of ridges. Ridges are good for railroads. Trains can't go up and down hill like an automobile. And the location of that was in what is now downtown Atlanta, under the World Congress Center, which of course did not exist then. It was just out in the woods. There were a few farms around the Atlanta area, but that's about it. And so they drove an engineer's benchmark in the ground, marking the end of this railroad.
There were no buildings at the location of Milepost Zero back then. There were no farms, not even any cabins. Nothing but woods between what is now Pryor Street and Central Avenue. The owner of this land was Samuel Mitchell of Pike County. Mr. Mitchell met with Governor Lumpkin in Marietta and, graciously declining an offer for payment, donated 5 acres to the state for the building of Terminus. Colonel James Bogle, another noted Atlanta rail historian, recounts the early construction of the Western and Atlantic.
Well, the W&A got started construction-wise in 1839. Stephen Harriman Long, a topographical engineer with the U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel, topographical engineers, was the principal engineer for the laying out of the W&A and figuring out the route it would take between the Chattahoochee River on the south and the Tennessee River on the north, somewhere near what later became Chattanooga. Their biggest obstacle in getting to Chattanooga was going through the mountain that we know today as Cheetah Mountain, where Tunnel Hill, Georgia is located, and that's just a little bit north of Dalton. Otherwise, the railroad was fairly easy to build. They followed the lay of the land. It's quite crooked, and there are no heavy grades on the line. There are over 10,000 degrees of curvature, however, between Atlanta and Chattanooga, which was originally some 138 miles. Over the years, those miles have been reduced now to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 135.
Stephen Long resigned in 1840 to pursue other interests. He declined an offer of half interest in 200 acres around what is now Marietta Street, stating that the only thing Terminus was good for was one tavern, a blacksmith shop, a grocery store, and nothing else. By Christmas Eve 1842, Terminus had its railroad, as the first Western and Atlantic train chugged north. The first locomotive, the Florida, was purchased from the Georgia Railroad and had been moved overland on a large wagon pulled by 16 mules. The first passenger car was built at the state penitentiary at Milledgeville and was also brought to Terminus by wagon. People came from miles around to see the first train to Marietta. Many of the riders on that first trip had never seen a train before. When the train got to the bridge over the Chattahoochee, some riders insisted that the train stop so that the faint of heart could walk across.
By 1843, there were, maybe 200 people in what's now the downtown area, and they wanted a post office. And to get one, they had to have an official name. Terminus was never asked for because by that time 2 other railroads were building to connect with the W&A here. So we were about to become a junction and not a mere terminus. And it was remembered that Governor Lumpkin had a young daughter, I think she was in her late teens, named Martha. And it was decided to name the town Marthasville in honor of the Lumpkin family.
The shape of downtown Atlanta has to this day been determined by the routes selected by those first railroads. They were not in competition with each other, and since then there were no previously existing industries in the area, the railroad simply selected the most favorable routes. By 1844, there were 7 streets in Marthasville. Well, the new commissioners attempted to add additional streets, but they were met with resistance as many citizens of the day thought there were enough already.